Okay, everyone. So this is now I'm continuing on to verse 13 of chapter 4 of Ruth. Okay. Vaikach Boaz et Ruth v'tehi lo la'isha. Right. So after the blessing of the elders, the male elders at the city gates, now we have the kind of aftermath of that. Right. And Boaz took Vaikach Boaz Ruth. Okay. At Ruth, right? So Ruth, and she was to him vatahilo as a wife, or she was to him a wife. Okay, probably in this kind of lover marriage sense, of course. Vayavo eleha, and he went to her or went into her, right? Which is the euphemism for sexual intercourse. Vayitain Adonai lach herayon. Okay, vateled Bane. Okay, this part gets a little weirder. And therefore, so he went into her and he went to her, and the Lord gave to her a pregnancy or a conception. Okay, this is a very strange way to phrase what happens next, right? Obviously, like I said, at the end of Ruth here in chapter 4, a lot of this is to build up to the birth of David. So that may be why God is so intimately involved in the sexual life of this couple, okay? So much so that it is said that God or Yahweh gave to her the pregnancy, okay? And she bore a son, okay? So a lot of this emphasizes, right, the how this is a fulfillment, right? This lover of marriage and the bearing of this special child is a fulfillment of God's plans of revival for this particular family and the demonstration of the Hesed of Yahweh. Okay. So once that's done, right, it now turns, right, so this is really the kind of connecting verse, right? Now it turns to kind of another blessing, this time by the woman. Okay, so really what happens is you have this nice setup where you have the blessing of the elders, the men, this is followed by a line in verse 13 about how this has come to fruition, right? There's a son, right? And now it ends with this kind of blessing of the women. Okay, which is then followed by this very odd kind of lineage, the Davidic lineage, the male Davidic lineage. Okay, so it goes kind of this male, men, women, almost as this kind of back and forth, like I said, song of songs like dialogue between the genders. Okay, has this kind of, I think, kind of a Bollywood interplay. Okay, so now in verse 14 you have the reply or the blessing of the women. Okay, Hanashim, okay, Vatomarana, okay, Vatomarna, okay, Hanashim El Naomi. And the women, they said, right? I mean, you don't see this kind of third masculine plural ending very often, right? And the women said, right, this Tomarna, okay, said to Naomi, okay, Baruch Adonai, right? Blessed is Yahweh. And remember that this blessing, right, not only forms this nice retort or reply to the blessing of the men at the city gates, right? So this is, the blessing of Boaz by the men, the blessing of Naomi by the women, but of course refers back to this earlier blessing way at the beginning of the book of Ruth. Remember when Boaz comes onto the scene, the men say, or his servants or workers say, blessed are you to Yahweh. There's this blessing, right? A blessing that is mimicked by that is kind of replayed when Boaz blesses Ruth as soon as he meets her. Okay, so there's lots of blessings, right? Again, telling you this whole thing is a blessing of Yahweh. But anyways, okay. So the women said to Naomi, blessed is Yahweh. Okay, Asher lo heshbit lach goel hayom. Okay, who did not cease for you. Okay, this is a Hephiel. Okay, it's from Shin Beit Tav. Okay, third masculine singular, perfect. Who did not cease for you. And Shabbat means, it's the same word from Shabbat. Shabbat, right? It means to cease or to rest, right? It means a seventh. Okay, but it really means to cease or to rest in Genesis 1, where it's using cease from your work, right? Who did not cease for you or really what they're saying is who did not ever stop working on your behalf, who did not ever stop working on your behalf, so that you can have a goyel today, right? I mean, so literally it says, blessed is Yahweh, who did not cease for you a goel today. Okay. And so now you got to make it kind of pretty, right? Who did not cease working on your behalf so that you can find the Redeemer today, is really what I think it's saying. Okay. Vayikare Shemo Israel. And like the male blessing, right? It refers to now all of a sudden in the middle of the blessing of the women, right? Again, it suddenly switches to talk about this magical child that's going to be born. And may his name be called, this is again in the Nifl, I don't have you parse it here, and may his name be called in Israel. Remember, the name means not only name, but may he, it means reputation. Literally you have to do a kind of more metaphorical translation of this. May his name be renowned in Israel, right? Again, this blessing is better fit for a king. May he be famous in Israel, right? And of course, who is this referring to? The most famous person in Israel, David, okay? So may his name or reputation be renowned in Israel, okay? And again, this mimics the men's blessing as well, who, where you saw in the men's blessing, the men are also, talking about the name of this child or the reputation of this child, right? So it's kind of nicely, you have this nice mimicry here, right? Parallelism here. Also, of course, the emphasis on the name makes sense, of course, considering that this story is all about love of marriage, which has to do with the continuance of the name of the dead. Okay, and the memory of the dead, really. Okay, so may his name or reputation be renowned in Israel. Okay, v'haya lach la meshiv nefesh, and I think it's continuing to talk about this child. Okay, and may he be for you. Okay, the one who caused to return your soul. Okay, so I would say, may he be for you a restorer of your soul. Okay, nefesh means soul, it means life. It doesn't necessarily always mean kind of like a spiritual soul, right? It can mean the mind. Okay, this word here is really interesting, shuv, right? This is hiphil infinitive, hiphil participle, masculine singular, from shin ba bait, which means to return, right? And of course, shuv can have a larger meaning, not only just to return or to do again, but this kind of larger shuv, which is, the word can also mean a reference to the return, i.e. of the exiles. Okay, again, maybe there's an exilic reference here, right? And may he be for you, that is a child, right? Somebody who restores your soul, restores life. And indeed, that is what happens with this child, right? Because he becomes the means by which this family is restored, right? Gets to live again, though it looks like they were going to die out. Okay. Again, there is also alongside, as this family of Elimelech and Noemi become a kind of symbolism of Israel in general, likely a reference to the exile and then therefore the return. Okay, the shuv. Okay, of the entire group of people. Okay, so may he be for you a restorer of your soul, and this word, lakalkel et shevat. Okay, and this is what you don't need to know this, but this is on what is called a pill-pal form. Okay, very rare form. It has similar. The pill-pal doesn't occur very often. Has the same kind of meaning as a hiphil. It's kind of this reiterative meaning. Okay, and may he continually support. Right. This is from kal is the pill-pal form of kul, kaf, vav, lamed, right? And kaf, vav, lamed means to sustain, or to support, or to hold, to protect, nourish. So so again, talking about the child. So may he be a continual restorer of your soul, and may he continually nourish or sustain you in your shevat in your old age. Okay, and it has this kind of interesting emphasis or wordplay repetition of shave, shave, shave. Okay, in your old age, right? So on the one hand, it's like this blessing of and may he help you out when you grow old, right? And remember that love of marriage in part was not only for the benefit of the dead man, right? So that his name will not cease in Israel, right? And of course, there's this emphasis on your name, shame, shame, shame. But remember that the other point of love of marriage is for the benefit of the widow, right? Especially, as she ages, right? In an environment where she could not inherit, right? So was really dependent on her sons or on having a son who can inherit for her, right? So this would make sense as a blessing. However, in that it interplays with shuv, right? Shebateh, sebateh instead of in that it's wordplays with shuv or to return. Again, probably a reference to the exile and return pattern we've seen throughout. So may he continually nourish you or support you really in your old age. So may he be like a benefit for you in your retirement, really, is what he's saying, right? Especially in the society where if you retire without children to take care of you, you are really screwed. Okay, so may he continually support you in your old age. Ki kala take asher ahevatech yaladatu, because your daughter-in-law, kala take, who you love, right? Asher ahevate, who you love, okay? Who loves you, okay? So, because your daughter-in-law, who loves you, okay? And you can tell it's you because of the suffix here, who loves you, she bore him, yaladatu, okay? She bore him, okay? And I'm not sure what this is trying to say, right? Because of course, it's a nice way to reference the role of Ruth, because one of the questions you have really at the end of Ruth 4 is that though the book is called Ruth, at the end, it like Ruth disappears. Like, where the hell is Ruth? Right? She's there to bear the child, and then she's like, poof, gone, right? And so it nicely brings Ruth out. Interestingly, also, right? Because it ends with this kind of blessing of the women, it brings out the fact that it was really two women and the bonds between them that really is what saved this family, right? So it has this kind of nice feminine emphasis at the end, okay? It may again have a kind of political emphasis as well, or political message. The word ahav, which means to love, in the Hebrew text, love has the term ahav, or to love, has a political nuance, okay? So it could be that, because of course this is going to all lead to the birth of David, that they are deliberately using a word that has both an emotional element, but also a kind of political element to it as well. Okay, so because your daughter-in-law who loves you bore him, okay, asher he, right, now she, right, tovah la mi shivam banim, she who is better, literally says she good for you, from 7 sons, right? So this is a comparative name, right? The name is here, right? And she who is better to you than 7 sons. Okay, and I like this kind of 7 here and the Shabbat language here, which is quite nice, right? And again, a very positive affirmation, right, of how this despite the importance placed on the need of a man to kind of step in and perform the duties of lover of marriage, what's nice about this text is that it ends, I think, with this, again, reaffirmation of the bonds of between 2 women, right? This woman who is better for you than 7 sons, okay? And what's interesting, of course, is that this whole blessing of the women that emphasizes the bonds and the role of women in the salvation of this family really is kind of undercut at the very end by this lineage, this Davidic lineage of only men, right? So there's the text keeps kind of giving and taking away. Okay, who is better for you than 7 sons. Okay, and now this is the kind of aftermath, right? So there's an aftermath of the men's blessing, right, which leads to the birth, Ruth conceiving and giving birth, and now we are given sort of in parallel the aftermath of the women's blessing. Okay, Vatika Naomi et Hayelet. But Tish Tehu Baheka, okay? And it's kind of touching, and Naomi took the child, okay? And Naomi took the child, and again, this is a Hishtafel, okay? You have seen some weird binyans here, which functions very much like a pilpul, which functions like a Hitpael. All these binyans that you are not taught in intro. It's reiterative, it's self-reflexive, okay? And it comes from the root hey, yod hey, hayat, to be. And so she took, she took the child, and he was continually at her bosom. Okay, so she's like, basically she's like a second mom. She loves this child, this precious child. Okay, and she was continually placed her in her bosom. I get, she's always, Naomi and this child are one. Okay, vatihi lo la omenet. Okay, and she was to him a foster mom. Now, this word is really tricky. It doesn't appear very often, right? You can see she was to him as a nurse is another translation you find. But if you look at the middle of the word, right, the root of the word is ayin mem nun. This is where we get the word amen, right? It is to confirm, right? It is to kind of make certain. Okay, amen. Okay, that's the meaning that amen has. So really, the more literal translation of this is, and she was to him the one who made him certain, the one who confirmed him, the one, you almost get the sense, the one who brought him up and made him what he is. Okay, so and I don't know why it has this emphasis on Naomi. I mean, certainly it is clear that this child, the main benefit of this child is that that Ruth bears, is that it strengthens or rebuilds the house of Naomi, right? And so maybe this emphasis on how dear this child was to Naomi, and how she was like a foster mom and raised them and all that, is to, again, make sense of the fact that this is not the usual way that levirate marriage would interplay, right? Usually, you would have to marry Naomi, not Ruth. And so maybe this is a way of bringing Naomi and Ruth back into this kind of weird, unkosher, I suppose, unusual way of levirate marriage. Okay. I mean, certainly what comes across is the fact that, that Naomi is the main beneficiary of what Ruth does, and the main beneficiary of this continuation of the lineage via this child. Okay. So she confirmed him or raised him up. She was to him a nurse, however you want to translate that, right? And now, Va Tigrana, right, again ends with this kind of feminine voice, right? And notice the ending, right? This means that this is a bunch of women that are saying this, and the women called to him, right? Which women? Shakenot, Shame, Lamor, right? The ones that were her neighbors. Okay, a name, again, this emphasis on a name, right? How do you make that pretty? Let's say, and the ones who don't, and the women, the ones who dwelt nearby, or the women neighbors. That is probably Naomi, women neighbors, right? Or the townswomen, I guess it would even make sense, right? Gave him a name, gave this child that was, Naomi's grandson, beloved of Naomi, Naomi a name. Okay, and of course, name can mean reputation, right? So, Yulad Bain saying, right? Yulad Bain Naomi. Okay, Va Tigrana Shamo Oved, Hu Avi Yishai Avi David. Okay. The women, the neighborhood women, gave him a name, saying, a son is born to Naomi. This is a Pual. Okay, notice Pual is the passive counterpart to a Piel. Okay, and so it's whatever a Piel does, but made also passive. The way that I know it's a Piel is because of this doubling in the middle consonant, just like a Piel would have. Remember that when you see this oo sound or an o sound, that's an indicator a lot of the times that something is passivized. Okay, so passive participle is katuv. Okay, this oo sound. Okay, anyways, saying, a child is born, passive, to Naomi, right? And they therefore, and I don't know quite how this therefore works. A child is born to Naomi, and therefore the women called his name Oved. Okay, so there are lots of questions here, which is like, why is it that the townswomen get to give this guy a name, this child a name? Okay, how does this yulad bein, how does the explanation that a child is born to Naomi, or that Naomi loves this child so much that it's like, she becomes like a foster mom, how does that explain the meaning of the name that is given to this child, which is Oved? Oved, which I've had you parse here, is A-O-A. This is a participle, call participle from masculine singular, from ayin beit dalet. And if you look up ayin beit dalet, it means to work or to serve. Okay, so like how this all fits, it's a bit of a mystery, right? Now one can kind of make sense to it. One explanation, and I ask you to to list the meaning of the various names of David's ancestors. Like I said, Avid, Avad, right? Means to work or to serve or to worship. Remember, there's a lot of little references to worship or to work in this little section, right? The first is Shabbat, right? Which is what? A cessation of work on the seventh day, right? You also have, the 7 being repeated here, right? You remember that this blessing is about God who did not cease working on Naomi's behalf. Okay, so maybe the reference here, the reason why the women call him Oved, right, is because this is in reference to, right, the kind of hesed of Yahweh, right, who never ceases working for the benefit of his people. In particular, as we've seen in the story of Naomi and Ruth. Okay, it could also refer, even in death, God keeps working to revive this family. So there's that kind of element to it. It could also indicate that the, regeneration of this kind of dead family, the revival of this dead family, is a kind of not only a demonstration of God's hesed, but of course, a way, for this family now to be therefore revived and to worship him. Right, that this whole thing is a setup, right, for the later worship and service to the Lord that will be performed by whom? The descendant of all of the special child, who will be David. Okay, so another way to read this is, and they called his name, like future worshiper. Okay, referencing not only not necessarily Ovid, this child, but David. Okay, I don't know. There's maybe other reasons why you have this, so you kind of have to work out why his name is Oved and what that has anything to do with the fact that this is a son that's given to Naomi. I don't know. Okay, so you have, his name is Oved. Okay, maybe again talking about how even Naomi, despite her old age, was able to bear a son through these various loopy channels. Okay. Okay. We are then told he is the father of Jesse, Yishai, okay, who is the father of David. And what I've asked you to do is to kind of illuminate or write down what Jesse and David means. Okay, so Jesse, so Oved, like I said, means the one who works or worships. So again, maybe a reference to the way that God works through various means, including Boaz and Ruth, to kind of resurrect the family of Naomi. So this is the God of Israel, the Israelite family, as well as fertility. Jesse means there is, right? So it's so one meaning of Jesse, yesh, okay, is this particle of existence, right? So his name can actually mean there is, or presence, or whatever, right? There is something, right? It can also mean wealthy, okay, or there is substance or substance, okay. So really, yesh, it's a particle of existence, okay. And so why is the the name of the descendant of, or the son of Oved, Jesse? Well, again, remember that the story of Ruth it centers a lot on this question of whether this family is going to exist or whether they're going to die out, okay? And related to that, whether there's going to be enough sustenance or food, right, to sustain this family, okay? Hence the harvest and regeneration theme that we've seen throughout this book. Again, the story of Elimelech and David and all, this whole story, Ruth, is not only just referring to a particular family, but to Israel in general, okay? So there may be a kind of, the reason why you have the next son be named Jesse is this question, right, or a reminder to God that God is the one who causes Israel to continually be in existence. Okay. And of course, he is the father of David, so it nicely ends with David, right, telling you what the purpose of this whole story is. And what does David mean? David means beloved. Okay, so it ends with this kind of beloved, special child, right, that God brings forth through the use of this nearly killed off, nearly decimated, right, family of Israel, right? And again, like I said, this is not just referring to a particular family, but to Israel in general. So I think in some ways it certainly leads to the reign of David, sets up for that, right? So it ends with David. Another way to think about it is that it ends with the word beloved, right? Beloved by whom? By God. Who is this referring to? To Israel as God's beloved. Okay, so it ends with an emphasis on the entire country in general. And of course, another way to read this belovedness, right, is that belovedness, or especially the way that the story ends, the story about Hesed ends, is this final word, beloved, which seems to, again, hint as to what Hesed means, right? What does Hesed mean? Hence, Hesed, in part, is a state of loving, right? And of course, belovedness, right? And in particular, the belovedness that God gives to his chosen group, okay, to Israel. So it has this kind of beautiful ending, right? So with that, we are finished with the book of Ruth. And I think the translation is such where you have translated, I think there was only maybe parts of chapter 1 that you don't translate, but nearly all of Ruth has been translated. If you follow if you do the translation worksheet, okay? Okay, well, I will see you again next week.